go live across our other platforms. If you're just joining us, you are very, very welcome. So if it's your first time, you're very welcome to our Work Well Live webinar. So we're delighted to be joined today by Paula Voiseux of Glenveagh Properties. So as with all our Work Well Live events, Work Well Live in-person events or our webinars, the whole idea today is just to share information and to learn from others. And today we're really grateful to Paula for giving up her time to share some of her own experiences with Glenveagh Properties. So Paula's a HR business partner with Glenveagh. And Glenveagh were last year awarded won the Workplace Wellbeing Award from NISO. So that's the National Irish Safety Organization. So I had the great privilege of seeing, part of this presentation previously at the Healthy Ireland recent event Healthy Ireland hosted. So I was very impressed with the work that's going on at Glenveagh. So I just thought it was a really interesting case study to share with our audience. And thanks to Paula, as I said, again, for giving up her time to do that today. So as usual, guys, with the format, we're going to keep it nice and reasonably informal. If you have any questions at all during the session, pop them in the chat, pop them in the comment section of whatever stream you're looking on. We'll try and get to as many as possible. But Paula's going to present a short enough presentation. We'll try and have questions during, Paul. If I notice an interesting question coming through, or if I have a question myself, I might just interrupt you if that's okay, and just put that to you. Otherwise, Paula, look, really delighted that you could join us today, and I will hand over to you for the presentation.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to the Work Well community for inviting me. I
will just make sure you're a co-host there so you can share. There you go.
Thank you. Let's hope the gremlins have gone. Are we all seeing the screen?
That is just popped up for me there. Yep. Looks
perfect.
Good.
All right. So I'm Paula Voiseux. I'm with the company called Glenveagh Properties as a HR business partner. I've been with Glenveagh since the early 18, so not long after they it became a PLC. So the journey that I've had with Glenveagh has been really interesting one, and obviously part of that has been on the wellbeing side of things. So I'm delighted to share our journey with you guys. And it's a journey. We're not there yet. We've a lot of work done, but we still have a lot of work left to do. So just just what we'll be covering today. And as Brian said, I'm delighted to answer any questions that people might have. How we did it, what our challenges were, what the cost and what the outcomes and key learnings were as we went through this wellbeing journey over the last couple of years. So about us, we were founded at the end of 2017 in that we became a PLC at the end of that year. We're a leading Irish home builder. We have a vision around giving people access to great value and high quality homes and building communities across Ireland. Our headcount is now, it's about around the 420 mark. When I started in early 18, we had 113 employees. So at the start, actually, in 2017, we only had 85. So we've increased our headcount considerably. That headcount is split across our 21 construction sites, roughly 50-50 between the sites and our headquarters, which is in Maynooth in County Kildare. And so with that, I suppose, comes various demographics in terms of our workforce from the site perspective and from the office perspective. And the growth and the rapid growth has been one of our challenges, I guess, over the last number of years. Our makeup is around 20% female. And as I mentioned, about 50% of our employees would be in office-based roles, working in a hybrid format now, and then the other 50% would be on the construction sites. At the end of 22, we launched our Building Better strategy, and this was key, I suppose, to everything that we've done, not just in wellbeing, but in diversity and inclusion, and overall our strategy. So as you can see, there's a high level of commitment given to valuing and developing colleagues. Our senior management team, thought it was important to put that front and center to develop that in the new business strategy. Okay. We developed a workplace wellbeing policy, which obviously is underpinned by the strategy, our culture and our values. Our statement is that we recognise the importance just going to minimize this window, of taking a proactive approach to people's health and well-being. So it's not just to get people well if they've been unwell, it's to keep them well and keep them, prevent them from becoming unwell. Our culture is open and inclusive. We're committed to implementing initiatives that are underpinned by solid practices and support services, both for the managers and their team members, and actually their extended families as well. Our aim being to sustain and continuously develop that work environment to one that promotes and supports both the physical and psychological well-being of all of our colleagues. There have been a number of challenges along the way, not least, as I mentioned, the high growth and fast-paced environment in which we work. Both from a technical perspective and just in terms of the amount of hiring and new employees that we have and continue to take on monthly. The multiple location piece is a challenge, setting up new sites, embedding a culture across all of those sites as they spring up, new colleagues, all the time. We've varied needs in terms of our employees. So as I mentioned, we have a headcount of roughly 420. About 20% of them are female. About 50% would be in office roles, 50% of the total headcount, and about 20% of the total headcount would be in operative roles. So they could be doing snagging or driving machinery, etc. We have a really strong graduate intake as well. So all of these needs obviously needed to be addressed. Communication, for the same reasons as I've outlined above, particularly the multiple locations and people having access to emails, etc. That was a challenge, and continues to be addressed, I guess. Engagement, probably because of the three aforementioned points, we had low attendance at any initiatives or events we were running, and we had low take-up rates across the benefits that we already had in place. The wellbeing events were seen as one-offs and not in any way linked to our culture or linked to the strategy. There weren't many opportunities, and that's still a challenge again because of the location piece, to interact and to socialise, and particularly this was prevalent during COVID, when the sites were operational, aside from the there was two particular times where sites weren't allowed to be, but all of the sites had to get back to work relatively quickly, and the support functions, the head office was effectively closed. So we had to quite quickly move, like many organisations, to remote working, and that posed a challenge in terms of the culture we were trying to build. We still continued to hire during the lockdown periods. So again, we were faced with the challenge around how to properly onboard new team members into the culture that we were creating. Budget wise and resource wise as well, there was no defined budget attached to wellbeing. There was no dedicated resource. It was sort of a HR piece of work, that was done as an aside to the day-to-day role, and that became a little bit of a challenge to try and fit it all in. And then I guess the other thing I'd say about the challenge is construction. The industry, it wouldn't be perceived to be an industry which is, very well-being focused. And so we were, I suppose what we were doing was presenting an employer value proposition that was different from the other construction companies out there. So how we developed the strategy, around assessing needs and then setting objectives and targets and KPIs. So took a measure of absence rates and the costs associated with those absences. Measured the usage of the employee assistance program which we had in place. So we were looking to drive that usage up, through raising awareness of the support that's there for people.
And so Paula, just to say, so you were, let's take the first one there, you just took your own kind of benchmark absence rates. What does a 1 day absence cost us, for example? Put a cost against that and then kind of work that out.
Exactly, and a percentage of days lost over the year.
Yeah.
And what does that tell us? Well, it doesn't tell us much when we look at it initially, but when we look at it again 6 or 12 months down the line, it should show us something. And funnily enough, the absence rate was quite low. The reported absence rate is quite low, which is actually a little bit of a problem, because it could mean that people are reporting to work while unwell.
Yeah.
So what we've done as part of the strategy is we're rolling out, for example, return to work interviews, and we're encouraging our managers to actively manage their employees' well-being all the time and keep an eye on them. So not that we want absence necessarily to go up, but we want the reported numbers to be correct and true.
Sure.
We took a review of our existing initiatives. So as I mentioned, we already had an EAP in place. We already had healthcare. We had those in place since early 2019. And, those providers of those benefits, have had a lot to kind of offer us that we maybe weren't taking up. So we took a review of everything that we could offer and kind of pull together. We looked at what pension and healthcare take up looked like. And we continue to look at these. We look at these monthly. Conducted a wellbeing survey at the start of last year to see what people needed and wanted, and again, what was feasible.
And Paul, is that a dedicated wellbeing survey, standalone, or is it part of, let's say, an annual survey or other pulse surveys?
It was a mini one that I conducted as a standalone. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
We collect exit interviews for people obviously leaving the business. So reviewing the content of that was a large project last year. And part of it was, obviously assessing the reason why people were leaving. Was it attributed to one particular cause or factor? So again, just to see what data we can gather and what insights we can gather from people leaving the business. We are a great place to work, certified and accredited, and we're investors in diversity accredited as well. So again, those surveys do have wellbeing elements in them. And so we were looking at the data we got from those, and also the comments. There's a lot of comments that come through those surveys as well. We had an opportunity, I guess, to set ourselves apart, as I mentioned, from other construction companies. So, we had already introduced paid maternity and paternity leave. We had already introduced in 2020 actually, and also more flexible parental leave than the statutory entitlement. We'd also embedded pregnancy loss leave into some of the policies, but again, people didn't necessarily know about these. So that was kind of one of the challenges we faced, as well as actually communicating out. So sorry, I'll get to that bit in a minute. As part of the strategy then, we looked to see what we needed from each kind of player in the space. So from a HR perspective, we wanted somebody to be dedicated to kind of manage the program. That person is myself as part of my role. So that doesn't mean I'm the only person responsible for wellbeing, but it means that I'm, I suppose, tasked with identifying and kind of measuring what we're doing. Obviously, evaluate, review, monitor, and review the KPIs is key. To all of the individuals in the business, we expect them to use opportunities to address their well-being, so use the services that are provided to them, to actively engage with initiatives that will benefit both themselves and the teams around them, and to give us constructive feedback on the programme itself and individual initiatives. People managers are expected to champion the strategy, to empower people to engage with initiatives, so either take up benefits or just attend initiatives that might be going on. And as I mentioned previously, to take an active role, and we're providing them with the tools to be able to do that in a consistent way.
I was going to ask there, Paul, what tools, like, is there do you provide additional training or focus for the line managers?
Yeah, so training was rolled out a couple of years back, specifically around the lockdown time, and we've just repurposed that training. It's about to launch again in June, just around hybrid teams and how to manage wellbeing, and how to address issues, and how to even just have an open culture, or make sure we have an open culture where people feel comfortable in discussing any issues that might come up.
Oh, very good.
And to be conscious of people's needs as well. Flexible working, we have that in place for everybody that works in the office environment. So, what suits person A and what suits person B mightn't be the same, but once they're within the parameters of what the company deems acceptable, then it's for managers to structure their teams accordingly and support those individual needs.
Sure.
So senior leaders, again, just to lead out on the strategy and to support the creation of the culture and to help us work towards achieving KPIs. And, our senior leaders will attend events, whether they be social or other kind of initiatives, and they will actively, talk about these these benefits that people have. And Wellbeing at our quarterly town halls usually has, there's usually a couple of words around it as well from the CEO, which is wonderful to see. So to bring the strategy all together then, we looked at the kind of the commitment overall, which is what I mentioned about the culture through implementing not just initiatives but policies to create that culture, and it's all underpinned by the practice and the support service and that are available to managers for both them as individuals and to manage and support their teams. So we looked at the both the Keep Well mark and the WHO kind of wellbeing pillars, and so we've gone with the 4 pillars. First one being physical environment. So our objective around there is that the workplace are physically safe and pleasant places to work. Some of the initiatives under there are, as you know, we moved to a new office in April. Our head office has moved quite close to where we were, but it's fully fitted out with collaborative spaces, a quiet room, a multi-faith room, mother's room, with a canteen serving healthy food as well, and that's again to support, you know, a workplace that or to promote a workplace that encourages all different kinds of collaboration. We on our sites then, our sites are industry leading. You know, we have food facilities at most of them. We have really big eating areas. We encourage people to come together and eat, and they actually do, and it's great. We've, you know, drying facilities. We've and it might sound basic, but we've facilities for our females on site as well, which doesn't come as prerequisite in all construction companies. Psychosocial environment then is around...
Sorry, Paul, you were saying for a construction business, you do have a reasonably high percentage of females, though.
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah. So the CIF report an industry average of 9% females across all construction companies in Ireland, and our female workforce is 20%.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of psychological safety, then some of the initiatives that are rolled out and that continue to roll out are our equity, diversity and inclusion strategy, which was launched in December as well. Employee network groups to support people from different backgrounds to, again, bring things to the table that might support their well-being at work. So be it, you know, parenting policies, be it supporting people that are neurodiverse, etc. We trained, we've got 12 trained mental health first aiders who are responsible for signposting people should there be difficulties at work from an individual perspective. And we have an employee recognition scheme which is focused on core values and behaviours. So again, you know, we try to link as much as we can to wellbeing, and while we're very outcome and output focused, we are a housing company at the end of the day with specific targets in place, and we also want people to behave in a way that is supportive and that is, I suppose, in line with our culture and our values. So that's part of it there. We provide people with personal health resources to both support and improve their well-being. So some of the policies that we have in place and some of the systems we have in place are hybrid working. So we haven't brought everybody back to the office. We've continued to work hybridly, which is definitely beneficial to everybody. We have very generous paid family leave policies, including, as I mentioned, pregnancy loss leave. We've healthy eating options both here in Maynooth and on our sites. We provide various kind of health related policies like flu vaccination, health checks, eye tests. We have our EAP, and we have an intranet which has regular updates and mails going out on you know, wellbeing topics and kind of podcasts and things like that people can have access to. And the final pillar then is community. So we are a very community focused organisation. It's obviously part of our vision is to build communities. And so our aim from a employee perspective is that they have ways of participating in the community that will improve not just their well-being but the well-being of others. So we have employee volunteering opportunities. We offer paid volunteering days to support our 2 nominated charity partners. the week before last, we did a store takeover at 3 Jack and Jill stores, and 3 teams went out and competed to raise as much money as possible. So it was a great kind of community focused day, which is good fun as well. So we like to do things like that. And we've lots of other CSR opportunities, and we do a lot of social events as well. So, you know, whether it be, we take advantage of the space we have here. So we have had quizzes and pizza nights, and obviously we do the traditional Christmas and events as well, but we do also do sports days and summer barbecue as well.
Great to see, as you kind of mentioned, that those 4 pillars. So you're aligned to WHO Healthy Workplace Framework, but also, of course, now the Healthy Ireland Workplace Framework as well. It's those 4 pillars are kind of the foundation for your strategy. So yeah, no, I was thinking Healthy Ireland actually sponsored the award that you won, if I'm not mistaken, the NISO award.
Yeah, that's true. And we were obviously delighted to get that recognition, especially for, you know, A, a construction company, and B, a company that's relatively new and that is, you know, so fast growing. You know, that there's a lot of change happening all the time, but it's great to be able to see the recognition for the positive changes that are happening. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned, not on this slide, but previously, some the KPIs came up a few times.
Yeah.
And Adele is just asking, are the KPIs set by senior managers, or do employees have a say in setting and agreeing the standards?
Well, actually, our HR team presented overall HR KPIs to the executive committee. So we would make commitments around things like diversity hiring, particularly, it's published in our ED&I strategy. We would make then commitments internally around attrition, turnover, reducing absence rates, the gender split as well, and the gender pay gap, obviously. So it's I suppose it's underpinned by the strategy, or it's sort of dictated by the strategy, all moving towards the end goals.
Right. So there's a lot of linkage going on there. Your strategy, your own kind of vision, but definitely the well-being element there. And so you propose those then to the executive committee, and they kind of have to sign off on those.
Correct. Yeah. As with the strategy itself. So, for example, and I'll talk about this on a later slide. Pension take-up and healthcare take-up, but particularly pension take-up, is indicative of intention to remain with a company. So we report on that monthly, actually. Right. You know, it's what our pension take-up is. It is linked to well-being, but it's also linked to kind of future intention of people to remain in the company.
Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting one. If you've got a good mix of, I don't know, targets there, where did the idea for them come from? Is that just reviewing a lot of what's going on in other companies, your own internal discussions? Where did the drivers for these kind of targets, if you like, where did that come from?
It's both of those things, and also, you know, our awareness of how challenging the market is. So obviously, as part of my role, I've always touched on talent acquisition. So I would have started solely managing talent acquisition in a standalone role, and now I've there's a team, but I'm still always involved, and you know, you have to have your finger on the pulse in relation to what's going on externally in the market. So, you know, we know we're competing for talent. We know we have to set ourselves apart from other employers, not just in construction, but in other industries as well. So we looked industry wide, and actually also just outside of our industry as well, to set those KPIs.
Excellent.
So as I mentioned, none of this is standalone. It's all underpinned by our policies and procedures. It's all to support the driving, and creation of our culture and our values, and the exhibiting of those behaviours, and underpinned by our EVP, and supported, of course, by communications, which we have internally. We have a communications function which helps drive everything.
Well, speaking of which, just nice timing there. Karen was just asking that the old communications question. How do you? I guess you probably kind of answered it already. If you have a team, how do you get the message out there to, the multi-site, especially the people out on the site, especially in the absence of? I'm guessing a lot of them wouldn't have email access.
Yeah. So it's an ever-present challenge that I don't know if I'd love to know if anyone's ever overcome it fully, or we're always trying to improve anyway. So what we did and what we do is we do as much as we can that can be recorded. So if we're running an initiative, we'll try and record it and share it then afterwards, or we'll run it at a time. If we've got somebody in speaking, we'll have them in head office and we'll have it live streamed to sites at a time when it's either lunchtime or tea break time, so that they can come in and actually sit and watch together in their group setting, because we have meeting rooms on all the sites. So that's if there's an event going on. If it's just around, if it's stuff about the culture, the values, the strategy, we have a meeting structure and a cascading down of performance management from the strategy, that all of the construction directors, the site managers would have conversations actually quarterly with their team members.
Okay.
So that again supports everything that the strategy seeks out, or supports the delivery of everything that the strategy seeks to achieve.
Okay, so it filters down to, let's say, the line managers on site, the communication, the word of mouth communication, if you like.
Yeah, word of, and you know, hopefully it'll come to the point where it is word of mouth and just word of mouth and it gets around. But there's also the formal structures as well, and you know, posters and we've that kind of thing as well. You know, it's I suppose it's a multi-strand approach. Yeah,
and I think Aoife is making a point on that as well. Just saying they have a similar setup with multiple sites. Not everyone would have a company email address. So they have a company app that pushes out new articles with notifications. And we've also used text messages to all employees for important notifications.
Yeah.
There's another way. I mean, I do know of organizations where as well, maybe people don't love sharing their let's say their mobile number as well. That's another challenge, but it looks like it's not in this case anyway.
Yeah, and we do communicate through personal email addresses. We have an app. It's called Populo.
Oh yeah.
Which facilitates the internal comms, but the app is used as well. And we've even put messages on people's payslips. So
really,
you know, everything and anything,
whatever.
Multi-channel. Yeah, exactly. So costs and resources then is the next kind of piece. So the main costs, I think that, you know, we would have had in place, in addition to what we were already providing as benefits to the employees. So we were already providing healthcare, pension and EAP. So the different kinds of training. So whether it's externally accredited, like the mental health first aid training, or internally delivered, there's still a cost associated with delivering, you know, any kind of training or purchasing it. Things like supplies for Wellbeing Week, or if we were, you know, we would have ran events and had prizes and things like that, or had speakers in. So there's costs around that. There's obviously our statutory requirements. So, you know, PPE and ergonomics and the proper, because again, we would consider the facilities we provide and the technology we provide to people as being supportive of their well-being too. So everybody gets a home office set up. Everybody is entitled to work hybridly. So those would be, yes, statutory, but also some of them a little bit outside of it. But again, they're costs that need to be factored in. You know, are you going to start providing desks and home office equipment to people? Because we did. Social events obviously can be as large or as small a cost as people or as companies can afford. As I mentioned, our sports and social committee have run quizzes here in the training area of the new building at little to no cost. You know, 3 weeks ago we had a sports day facilitated by an events company, which would have had a much larger cost, but a wider reach too. So again, it's about whatever fits the budget and whatever the organization sees as being a priority. There are a lot of low or no cost options that we leverage. We don't go out with a huge budget, not yet anyway, maybe in a couple of years. So as I mentioned earlier on, to leverage, if you've got healthcare or an EAP provider, to leverage that, you know, the account manager that looks after your business from a healthcare provider perspective probably be only too delighted to push out, you know, some talks, some other options that might be available. So we do partner with our healthcare provider who provides with the EAP as well, around, you know, getting as much as we can there and pushing out the benefits. Similarly, the pension provider. There are lots of local and national organizations. CIF is obviously the Construction Industry Federation. There'll be other bodies for your own industries, and the HSA. We've recently had As I Am and Shout Out come in to give talks around neurodiversity and LGBTQI plus issues. Again, quite low cost. They are charities as well, so you're also kind of feeding into quite a good initiative there. Obviously, Healthy Workplace, as mentioned by Brian, which is the newly launched website. It was just launched in April, and there's lots of information there and loads and loads of free resources there,
including your own case study, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and you may find a link to Glenveagh's case. And then obviously we couldn't go without mentioning the Workwell community, which is
that's a nice touch. Thank you.
And obviously everybody on this group probably knows about it anyway, but it's there's fantastic resources on there, and such a supportive community as well. I think it's great.
Can I just jump in there? There was a question from Anthony related to engagement on initiatives. So just asking, how is engagement? He's just maybe making the point, potentially with 80% male population, it might be difficult. And I think he means, especially with a lot of them, I'm guessing, would be out on site.
Yeah.
How is engagement?
So if we have an initiative where we have a speaker in, it depends who the speaker is. So obviously we try and tailor it to suit the maximum reach as possible. As mentioned, we try to have it at a time that suits most people, that they can get away for the 20 or 40 minutes. When we ran the survey last year, the main reason people gave for not attending events was, I don't have the time during the day. So again, taking that into account, going back to the management and the leadership team to say, guys, can we just enable people to take that time out? And again, trying to have it at a lunchtime-ish hour so that people can sit down and together maybe and participate if it's a talk. I'm not going to lie, over the course of the last 4 years, there have been times where I was the only one at certain things, or look, that's probably an exaggeration, but there will be times where it's not hit the right mark, or it's not the right time, or something's going on, and it's all hands to the pump somewhere else. And that can be demotivating when you're trying to get something up and running. But the advice that I was given by somebody who's much more in the know than me was just to keep at it and keep on refining and try and hit as broad a range as possible. But you're never going to reach all the people all the time when you have such a broad demographic like we do.
Sure, yeah, and you have to learn from all these initiatives, don't you? And I say the work you're doing with the line managers, that kind of training, that will be really important. That the line managers know it's in their remit, to let their teams know that they have permission to attend these, that's supported, that they can attend these initiatives when they are running.
Yeah, exactly. But also what we're finding, and anybody that's in a place at the moment where they're recruiting new people into their business will know that people's needs at the minute around choosing a new employer are not just about the pay and the what's down on that pay slip. It is about the culture, the environment, the community piece, the values. And so that's not just up to HR or talent acquisition to talk to them about at interview stage. That needs to be threaded through the organization, and that's really what we're striving to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that more and more. Yeah.
So a couple of the outcomes from the work that we have done, and as I said, continue to do, because it's not a fait accompli. This will continue to evolve. So we received the President's Award for Construction last year from NISO, as well as the Healthy Workplace Award. It was the 5th year of the Healthy Workplace Award, and it's sponsored by the Department of Health, who run the Healthy Workplace program, again, which we mentioned in the previous slide or two back. We've seen a greater uptake, which was one of our aims, and it continues to creep up. Our pension and our healthcare have gone up. They may look like small numbers, but they're not actually. they're good increases to get.
And thanks for sharing. That's an interest. I haven't seen that one before, actually. The pension uptake is a really interesting one as an indicator of kind of long-term commitment to an organization. Yeah, so it's a really interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and as part of our onboarding, actually, we do a check-in call with all our new hires at the end of the first week. They receive their pension and they receive their benefits information at the start of the week that they start. But at the end of the week, their check-in call also includes a reminder and a prompt to go and take up those benefits. So we're sort of just threading that whole thing through the whole time. We were named one of Ireland's top 30 large workplaces again in 23 for the second year in a row by the Great Best Place to Work organisations. And in our survey that we ran, actually that should say 2022, the results came out in 23, but we ran it in 2022. So our career and development score went up by 7%. So this, for anybody that's not familiar with Great Place to Work, it's a measure of trust in an organization. There's 17 areas, and there's kind of 3 pillars, and it measures people's trust. I suppose it measures their sentiment around their own work environment, their team, and their manager and their senior manager. So those scores going up by such large percentages were really encouraging. Recognition, so that was, things like the values-based reward scheme definitely had an impact there. The work environment and the processes. So again, the strategy being introduced towards the latter half of last year, certainly that was building all throughout the year. So people saw the benefit in that. Wellbeing score, really great to get it up by 3%, and engagement went up by 3% as well. Our diversity score went up by 4% to 94, I think, which I didn't mention here, but I think it does have an impact. Wellbeing and diversity and inclusion definitely have an impact on each other. We retained earlier in the year our silver mark, which is awarded by the Irish Centre for Diversity. And again, that is around, policies that support everybody in the organisation. So they would have assessed all of our policies, including obviously the family policies of flexible working, etc. So all contributing to people's ability to bring their authentic selves to work, which obviously contributes to their psychological safety as well. The learnings then, and anybody who is in the same journey as us probably will have similar learnings. So it must, anything you're doing around strategy must align with the overall org strategy and the core values. Buy-in from managers and leaders is absolutely key. And that it mightn't happen on, the first, couple of months, but you might have to just gradually earn that buy-in by proving the initiatives are valid and working.
And I was going to say, how have you found that, or how does that work for you at Glenveagh? I mean, I'm guessing things like winning an award like you did can only help.
Absolutely, and all of them, the NISO, the Great Place to Work, and the diversity, absolutely, because it I suppose it affirms not only our commitment, but it almost validates, the rationale around, right, this is actually why we're doing this. It does make a difference. It does have an impact on people's performance, because a better engaged workforce is a better performing workforce. And we've seen the dial move, particularly on the Great Place to Work, because it measures engagement rates over time, and you can compare and contrast the last time the survey was ran. So our percentage of people that were engaged versus disengaged, moved considerably. So all of these things do have an impact.
Yeah.
Data is key. So we talked about KPIs. So whatever KPIs are going to work for your organization, pull them out, continue to look at them, look at a suite of them, I would say, because everything's not going to impact every single thing. But if you can have a suite of them that you're kind of looking at on a regular basis, whether it be monthly, quarterly, or annually, that will help, and that will help get the buy-in as well. So the Wellbeing survey, find out what people want and what they need, and then build a strategy or build a plan around those wants and needs. Use the available resources and attach KPIs to everything. And it's not always about developing new programs. Like our main focus was on pulling all of the strands together of what we were already doing, using existing providers, using existing resources, partnering with HR and the EHS team to run. We had an EHS week last year and the year before, where the week was around managing yourself, managing managing, equipment or plant on site. So we work together across the business. It's not a silo. It's not a standalone role for somebody. And it's not always about going out and buying things off the shelf. You can actually build on what you already have. And then obviously the key 3 words are about the communication. So as
the 3 C's.
Yeah. The multi-pronged, multi-strand, if it's, as you mentioned, text messages on pay slips, posters, anything that gets the message out there, and just keep on doing it. Tell them what you do, tell them what was coming up, tell them what you've done then afterwards, to remind people, because people tend to forget. I
know. And those 2 last points are kind of linked, aren't they? Because sometimes half the battle is communicating what you already have.
Yes.
Getting that out there. Yeah. You can almost start there.
Yeah, exactly. And to not be shifting and changing the whole time, to just, just to keep building on what the foundations that are there, as opposed to just, pivoting all the time. And I think having a strategy around workplace wellbeing that links to the overall strategy, definitely, has helped steer us in the right direction as well. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you. That was excellent. You're certainly living and breathing what you're talking about. Data, as you summarized there in your final point, is key to an awful lot of what you're doing. And you shared a lot of really brilliant data points there. Some of your measures, some of your KPIs, which I think will be really, really useful to a lot of people on the call. So I have a question or 2, but if anyone has any other questions as well, please pop them in the chat. I see just the first one coming in there from Ronan. Thanks, Ronan. And if that's okay, Paula, we'll have a few questions to finish up. So Ronan, do you have any insights into the value of having mental health first aiders?
That's an interesting one, because we've only just actually started to regularly meet and try and capture anonymous data around what's coming to us as a team. So the short answer is no, I don't have any data on that, but we need to gather it. So we're creating almost a network group of the mental health first aiders, and we're just creating a communications plan as well. Because at the time of the launch of the team, and a couple of times in the meantime, we've done some communication, but we need a full-on plan and an exercise around measuring the success of it. It'll only ever be anecdotal, because obviously you can't share what's been discussed with you as a mental health first aider, but we could at least be gathering, how many calls or approaches or kind of interventions people were involved in. That's going to be our starting point now over the next 6 months.
Very good. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I think it's a brilliant program, mental health first aid. But quite often, and some companies, and once people are trained, people go on to flourish, or the team grows, continues to learn. In others, maybe they're just left to their own devices, and after that initial momentum subsides, they just kind of fade into the background. So, I'm actually working on something at the moment where, how do we address those gaps? What could we do to address gaps? And I'm coming at it from the place of, let's say, wellbeing champion teams, maybe mental health first aiders then as well. How does the team, once the training is completed, how does that team continue to learn and grow, turn into a living and breathing employee resource group or employee network group, as you call it, Paula? So I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah. And it is, it is one of those things, as you said, has to evolve and grow, and the team themselves probably, have to knit together in order for that to happen. Yeah.
So Anthony's commenting on this, following on from that, asking, are all your mental health first aiders, are they all managers, supervisors, or a mix of regular staff? Because he's saying sometimes that can be a barrier to someone who wants to or needs to talk to someone.
What we initially did was asked for volunteers from the HR and EHS team, health and safety team. So the initial cohort was that group, and then the second and third was just a mix of volunteers, and we'll do the same again now this year. Okay.
So you're going to bring in some new training for new colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. If there's any final questions, and Marion just saying she's completed the mental health first aid course. It was fantastic. Two Marions, actually. The other Marion saying excellent ideas. On the subject of data, so I'm a big fan of Adam Grant, organizational psychologist. He talks about, if you want to bring people with you from a well-being perspective, now it's a lot to it, but he kind of summarizes it in a beautiful statement. He says it's hard data and human stories. You've certainly got the hard data. Was there any side? Do you have the human stories element at Glenveagh, or how? And if you do, how do you get that out there?
In terms of anecdote, as in communicate it?
Yeah, exactly. Do you? Is there any platforms for sharing that in any way, or do you celebrate that in any way?
It's a great point, and probably we might have come the other way around before. It was the human stories, and isn't this a nice idea? Whereas now we have, we do have a huge focus on the data, and thankfully we've access to the data, which I know is a challenge for some companies as well. Do we celebrate it? Absolutely. I mean, I think the recognition scheme that I mentioned around the, peer nominated against living and breathing our five values is definitely a way of celebrating that. And also we do share insights around the survey responses that we get back in terms of, both obviously, we try to improve the gaps or fill the gaps, but equally we do acknowledge where we're doing well as well. So yeah, we do.
And how does that, the peer nomination thing work? Is that an anonymous thing? Colleagues can kind of nominate their peers? It
is anonymous. We roll it out quarterly. We would have a particular, time period of 3 weeks, I think, leading up to the closing date, where communication goes out and nominations are invited. And then it's the successful recipients of the awards are those that have had the most nominations, but also a story would go along with each nomination. So why are you nominating this person against the value of collaboration or safety first? What have they done to demonstrate this value? So there's particular time periods in the year, and then at our quarterly town halls, the CEO announces the winners.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so you have that bit of recognition there. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. Listen, I just want to thank yourself, Paula, for giving up your time, for giving us that fantastic presentation. I think lots of lovely comments coming in on the chat then as well. So really appreciate your time, Paula. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm sure people can reach out to you on LinkedIn if they wish.
I'd love that. That's great. Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you everybody for the lovely comments, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, we'll have a link to this if you want to share this with any of your colleagues. We'll have a link to this as well. I'll get that out in the newsletter next Tuesday. We're going to take a break from the live events for the summer. If you want to stay informed, if you're not already on the mailing list, get yourself on the mailing list. Drop me a line. It's brian@workwellireland.ie for that. If we're coming to the live events, in-person events are coming back in September. We're going to be in Cork, coming back to Cork. Very excited about that. We'll be in Uisce Éireann in September. We'll also be in the NTMA in Dublin. So 2 really lovely workplaces for in-person events starting back in September. So stay tuned for more details on that. If you want to organize any training programs, any wellbeing champion training courses, again, drop me a line. It's brian@workwellireland.ie. In the meantime, I'll continue with the newsletters over the course of the summer. So please drop me a line at any stage. Stay in touch. Thanks to everyone for joining us live today, or if you're watching on the recording, thanks as well for tuning into that. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely summer if I'm not talking to you. Paula, again, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a lovely summer.